This is part 2 of the Athol 644.5 Swivel Jaw Swivel Base Vise Rebuild series. If you haven't seen part 1, click the link at the top of the screen. In this video, we will be degreasing and soaking the vise. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. So here we are with the swivel jaw section of the vise, and we're going to attempt to remove that locking pin. I'm curious to find out if it's threaded or if it's just a taper pin. But the top side of it, the part that you're supposed to be able to grab onto with a wrench, is really mushroomed and deformed. Here's a close-up of it. And I need to kind of square it up, so I'm going to use a file to do so. This is really soft metal, which is also a problem because it simply means that we're probably going to just continue to deform and mar the top of this up with wrenches rather than have enough force to move or turn this pin. So I've tried a variety of methods here and hoping that we can just kind of knock loose some of those threads on the inside. I'm whacking it with a hammer. I finally decided, you know what, we're going to soak all this stuff and just get some of this crud and grease off of it so we can actually see a little better what we're dealing with. So my go-to degreaser that I use on just about everything is Simple Green. And I usually soak stuff for about 24 hours in Simple Green. And I don't dilute it. I just pour it straight out of the 2.5 gallon plastic jugs that it comes in. I get those from Home Depot. They're about 20 bucks a piece. And I like Simple Green for a number of reasons. One is it's environmentally safe, it's non-toxic, and you can reuse it. So I usually reclaim about 80 to 90% of it. So that stuff's soaked for 24 hours, and now we're reclaiming it. I'm just using this little battery-powered siphon that you can get from Harbor Freight. And I'm straining the Simple Green through some, I think they're 25 mil paint strainers to pour this stuff back inside those jugs. So we'll go ahead and reclaim everything but the bottom 2 gallons or so. And that way we can reuse all of that stuff, and then that bottom stuff that's got most of the crud in it, we'll just throw away. So after we've removed what Simple Green we're going to remove, we're going to go ahead and take each one of these parts over to the sink, hit it with hot water, and clean it up with a wire brush. And as I do this, I realize a couple of things. Number one, the Simple Green did not do a good job of breaking down whatever insane grease is on this vise. I have no problems with breaking down the grease on everything else that I work on, but this thing, that grease is, I don't know. So we'll clean everything up as best we can, wire brush it, and then we're going to have to look at an alternative option for degreasing. The other thing Simple Green will do a lot of times is it will strip the paint off of parts, which is good if you're going to repaint, but bad if you're trying to preserve the paint. So stuff like that main nut and the spring, the inside of the swivel jaw part of the vise, and the inside of the dynamic jaw, they're just still completely caked with grease. And the problem is we are going to be repainting this, so we've got to get it clean. I'm I'm not worried about the rust right now. We're going to de-rust all this stuff later on. So I had a viewer suggest in one of my previous series another degreaser that he likes to use, and he says it's dynamic. So we'll find out. Throw all this stuff back in the bin. And the degreaser we're going to be utilizing is a Members Mark product from Sam's Club, and it is a commercial grade heavy duty degreaser. So for a soak tank, they recommend 12 fluid ounces of this stuff mixed with a gallon of water. The mixture I'm going to do is 21.3 ounces to a gallon. So almost double what they're recommending. And we're going to soak this stuff for 24 hours and see how it does. So I end up mixing basically one of those gallons of the degreaser with 6 gallons of water. And this is where we are the next day after 24 hours. And we're going to scrub this stuff down again. And it did do a better job than the simple green, but there's still grease on there in the nooks and crannies and the tight areas. So what we're going to end up doing is re-soaking this stuff, and we're going to soak it for a week this time. And this is just trying to get all that grease out of the nooks and crannies. I even tried some carburetor cleaner. But most of this stuff, the grease, it's still very prevalent. Now the large sections are grease-free, but in the tight little nooks and crannies, it's in there. I guess another option would have been to take this stuff outside and hit it with my pressure washer, but I didn't feel like doing that, and it is what it is. So I think if we let it soak for a week, we should remove the majority of it. And we're just using a rag to kind of break loose some of that grease that's inside the opening for the main screw or lead screw. So we soaked those parts for a week, and this is where we are. So this is the swivel jaw, and we still have not removed that pin. Once we get that out of there and get the swivel jaw apart, we're going to need to soak that again. But I discovered something that I didn't see because of all the crud and stuff that was on this thing. Right here is where I notice it. And I'll give you a close-up of it here in a second. But there is a set screw right there. And believe it or not, that set screw presses up against the base swivel base screw, that big screw we removed from the bottom. And this explains why that thing was so hard to get out. It's the first vise I've ever had that's got a set screw like that there. But here I'm checking to see if the screw is actually poking into the threaded chamber that the base screw was screwed into. And I don't feel it inside there, but it definitely explains why that screw was so hard to get out. So we'll finish brushing this part off and rinsing it off, and then we'll get that set screw out of there. So here we are with the dynamic jaw. We're just going to rinse and brush it off as well. Now the other thing I should mention here is that the jaw inserts on this vise are built into the vise when it's cast, so you can't replace them. You can put caps over them, but you cannot replace them. They're not removable. All right, so here we are with that set screw. We're going to go ahead and get it out of there. And there it is with a ton of grease on it. So we're going to give this this pen an attempt here. I'm trying to figure out which way I want to turn it. Do I want to tighten it or loosen it to try to break it loose? And you can see it is, I mean, my workbench is a 4-foot by 8-foot bench, and this thing is not moving. And it's moving the entire bench in the process. So we'll try to beat on it a little bit with a mallet or a hammer. And if it was square or hexagon, we could try to get at it with an impact wrench, but with it being a rectangle, I don't have a socket that would fit that. And if we try to cut it down into a square, I think it's just going to rip that top piece off. So yeah, it just does not want to even budge. And I also, oddly enough, don't have a cheater bar inside my shop right now. I had one like a couple years ago, and I ended up cutting it up for some other project. So I'm going to have to go to Home Depot and get me a piece of pipe. At this point, it's clean enough, or at least I think it's clean enough, that I can shine a light up inside that hole and see if there are threads in there. Now it's really caked up inside there. Then I'm using a dental tool to kind of get some of that crud out of there. And then using the dental tool, I can feel the walls, and yes, there are threads in there. So this pin is probably 90% sure that it is threaded. So we'll give it the old mechanic's blue wrench attempt here. I'm going to refasten it to the table and then heat it up and try to break it loose that way. Almost always that works to break loose rusted stuff. But in this case, no. And as you can see, these adjustable wrenches are not the best for this because they've got a little bit of play. And that's just deforming the top of that pin. And the vise grips, because that metal is so soft, they're just spinning around, chewing up the outside of it. So we're going to hit it with some PB Blaster, and we're going to let that soak for probably a couple days, hitting it multiple times each day, and then we'll go at it in the next video. It's been suggested to utilize some acetone along with the PB Blaster to help penetrate it, or to soak this in transmission fluid or even brake fluid, but because of the flammability of those things, I don't want to mess with any of that stuff because I'm going to most likely be hitting this with the torch again. But that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. If you got questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. As always, I appreciate the support, and I will see you next time.